Welcome to this week's live stream on Our Next Adventure with me, Jason. Let's talk about my first time ever on NCL, which crazily enough, for some people, they rightfully so would say that this is absolutely nuts. And that is going to be the fact that, as you can imagine, the very idea of going on your first sailing with a company or different cruise line and finding yourself in a position where you are not just going on a different cruise line for the first time, but you're actually going to go on the same ship with that same cruise line for 26 nights in a row. I think I have that correct. It's either 24 or 26. I'll double check. And apologies if I'm off by a day or two. But the main point being that it was quite something, and I did it because I had a really great opportunity to take that time off. And as you can imagine, it is quite something where, sorry, I'm just getting some notes out here, but it's quite something where you are going to go on a different cruise line for the first time versus one that you are more familiar with, been on before, and so on and so forth. So let's get into it. I want to discuss what that experience was like, what in particular was something that I think struck me the most when it came to, my impressions of it, and starting with the booking process. I've got some fun little photos and stuff also to share along the way to make this a little bit more interesting if you don't just want to listen. And of course, feel free to add your view and opinion in the comment section below. It is certainly always welcome. So the booking process was actually pretty straightforward. I mean, you can even tell if you go onto NCL itself that for the most part, again, it was quite kind of straightforward. I think the one thing that I really appreciated about the way they have everything set up, for example, versus Virgin, which is what I was used to, is, especially nowadays with the changes Virgin has made, NCL are not trying to do this sort of, either you're all included or you're not. They're not necessarily in the middle of that. They've decided like you can kind of build your thing out as you wish. And so when you're searching, just like anywhere else, you got your filters and stuff. So I really enjoyed the simplicity of it, and the fact that how much you want to spend and the way in which you want to set up your experience with them is really up to you. And I really like that. So that was really simple. I think something that did sort of add to some complication or where there was a bit of a learning curve. And again, I say learning curve, it sounds a bit extreme, but it was really more of a case of like, you just had to get used to this sort of different way of doing things, versus Virgin, which was very simple. And that was just the way in which once you booked, that's when you can start to really look at all the plethora rather of added extra cost options if you wanted to. And of course, that was the other major difference here, right? It wasn't just that this was going to be my first time with a different cruise line, but it was that their model, their business model was distinctly different, versus what I was used to up until that point. So that was a bit of a, something to kind of wrap your head around, because you see the way they kind of, I say, advertise or market things versus then what you realize you've got is a bit misleading. So for example, when you go and book on their website, you'll see how it says like free Wi-Fi, or Wi-Fi is part of the package that you book if you get their drinks package and stuff, which I did. They do like that whole bundle thing with Wi-Fi, some discounts on shore excursions if you do any with them. And then some premium dining options, because now I was going into an environment where going on the ship meant that just with your general booking, it didn't include your drinks, like your sodas and stuff. It didn't include all the restaurants. There were extra charges for certain restaurants, right? And so getting that package just allowed me sort of to understand where I stood. And I only got a few credits with that, just to kind of go off of things there. And I wanted to make sure I got enough that I was actually able to try everything they had to offer on Prima. And that's another thing I want to mention, is the fact that this was with the Prima class ship, which is, again, like the apples to apples comparison with Virgin, given when Prima came out, or the Prima class first started, and when Virgin Voyages first ships started to come out. So it was a really nice way to compare. I think they were even made possibly by the same Italian shipbuilding company. Someone can check me in on that. So that was something new to get used to. But let's get into the fun of things. What was the embarkation day process like? Because again, remember, I came first to Virgin Voyages when it came to going on a cruise. And so I was used to the way they did it. And I was always used to reading how people were raving about the way in which Virgin actually does it. And it's really impressive. At least I thought it was at that point. And I have to say, there was a lot of confusion already with the way NCL did it, because with NCL, something that was kind of strange, really, is that they tell you about like, oh, you can in advance, print out the luggage tags and then you cut them out if you want to put on your luggage. I didn't quite understand why this is something that they do, because it just seemed really, I would say, strange to me. That you would be printing that when right at the port, guess what? They've got it. And to put it on your luggage was not difficult. I mean, it's literally the sticker thing, like what you're probably used to seeing. So I didn't understand why they recommend it when they've got it there. The way they made it sound was like you needed to print it before, and then if you didn't, the world would come to an end. This was very strange. But once I was there, the actual process was really simple. And keep in mind, this is in Civitavecchia, which is outside of Rome. That's where I was going. So this wasn't like I was leaving from their home port in Miami and everything's so nicely done there or whatever, or they've got like, I don't know, a in-house setup per se. They're using a port of another company or whatever. And again, I found it to be a very smooth process, no less or more crazy than Virgin's. And in fact, quite a nice thing about it was it seemed to me that you could really go on as early as you wanted to for the most part. Like from whenever they started, you could just go on straight away. Unlike Virgin, where of course you need to make sure that you get a certain time and you'll only be allowed to board at that time. It really kind of, the impression I got is, you could kind of go on the ship more or less, really whenever you wanted, subject to when you decided to select your time, but all times were available. So I went on, I think at around 10 a.m. And I really firstly found that to be so awesome because, yeah, I was able to already get on the ship and let's say start my vacation already at 10 a.m. versus with Virgin, I would have to wait until 1:30, 1:45, whatever's the earliest you can get on with the highest loyalty status. And that just kind of perplexed me. I mean, it was just so nice and refreshing to have that. The downside to this, of course, was that your rooms, and I guess this is maybe why Virgin do it, but your rooms won't be ready or guaranteed to be ready. I think if you were in the Haven suites or whatever their suite category is called, then your rooms would be ready by, I can't remember, like let's say 12 or something like that. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. If you were in a regular non-suite cabin, then you would be ready by no later, I think, than 2 o'clock or maybe 3, something to that effect. It wasn't that dramatic. So the end result is you can board earlier, start everything earlier, but you just won't have access to your cabin. And the only thing that kind of bothered me there is I had a lot of suitcases because this was going to be, again, 26 nights. I mean, it's crazy. Or 24 nights, just in case. But it was a bit annoying. I didn't like the idea really of leaving my luggage per se by itself or unattended, really. That kind of bothered me. I think if I remember correctly, I carried most of it on the ship. I don't think there was an option to give it to anyone. Maybe I'm misremembering that, by the way. I think, no, perhaps I gave it to someone, but I still had my carry-on in my backpack, okay? And so I didn't really like the idea of just leaving it in one of the rooms, and that's what they did. That was also different now, right? So I'm on the ship earlier, and if you wanted to go put in your cabin, well, you couldn't do that. But they did designate one of the areas. I think if I remember correctly, it was the Levity Comedy Club or the Levity area, which is where they had the karaoke and everything. And I think one other place, possibly Sid Norman's, which is like the bar and live music venue for certain things. And, of course, you can go and put your luggage there, but I kind of felt uncomfortable about leaving that. I'd love to know if I'm the only one who's like that. Um, I much rather am happier that it's in my room versus kind of just there. Not that I think someone's going to go and steal my stuff or something like that, but I don't know. There's sort of this creature comfort element to it that gets to me. So that was quite interesting. But again, compared to Virgin, I found it to be pretty much the same. There were just a lot of redundancies leading up to it that weren't very clear. Um, in terms of the cabins, I actually stayed in two different cabins during that trip. And the first cabin I stayed in was their solo studio cabin. And this was something I booked intentionally for the first leg of the trip, which was 10 days. And that was because I had heard and read that NCL's solo experience is the best out of all of them because of the fact that they have these a bunch of dedicated solo rooms, not just in terms of the quantity, but in terms of the variety. You didn't just have solo studios, you had solo insiders, you had solo balconies, and so on and so forth. So there was really this really pleasant situation where you had a bevy of choices to make in terms of what kind of solo cabin did you want. Of course, they aren't as plentiful as the non-solo cabins, but nonetheless, it was really great to see that there was more thought put in to the fact that you didn't just simply put all your solos in these insiders or with a sea view, like, for example, Virgin. The other cool thing about the studio concept was that if you were a solo traveler, but specifically you're in a solo category cabin, then you had access to a solo exclusive area, which was the solo studio lounge or the solo lounge. Okay. And if you stayed in the studios, then that was a short walk within the sort of internal compartmentalized part of the ship. It was quite nifty how they did that, and it was great actually for getting around. It was almost like, like a maze, like, oh, if you want to get from A to B but avoid the crowds and stuff, or you can just go to here and go through it. It was really fun to do that. But inside of that, I'll try and find some photos to show you. But inside of this, really, it was so impressive. And of course, I do have a video up of the solo cabin itself, which if you want to go watch that, of course, feel free to do so when this video is done. But the solo room and the cabin itself was just truly, truly impressive. I'm trying to find the footage, but it is on my videos if I can't find it. So by all means, go and check that out. I may give up on looking for this particular one. But either way, it was just really impressive to see that. And what was in there? There was a soda machine. There was always snacks, fresh fruit, a really nice lounge area. And all of this is covered in that video if you're interested in seeing more to this. So I won't spend too much time on it. But it really was quite a impressive thing to see. And the attention and thought and detail that was there was great. A great place if you just want to read, relax, watch some football or any other sports of your choosing, because they've got the TV there and everything. And a nice social gathering place if used properly. So I thought that was a really nice touch to see. The other room that I stayed in the second half, the transatlantic part of the ship, the trip, that was a regular family insider cabin. And that to me was, again, just an impressive design. I really enjoyed the design elements of both. It has a different style in a way to the solo studios because the studios kind of have their own, let's say, aesthetic. But nonetheless, it's very bright. I really found the beds to be comfortable. Again, this was a family room, so compared to a solo, it was obviously bigger. But regardless, I could see how this could handle 2 people, let alone, even up to 4 if need be. Although I'd say 2 is the comfortable number, maybe 3 at a push. The storage was fantastic. Again, plenty of electrical sockets for whatever you needed. And then on top of that, I was really impressed with just how spacious the bathroom actually was. Certainly, it felt more spacious than that of Virgin. Whether it is or isn't, someone I'm sure can check on that. Where they lost points for me in both cases compared to Virgin, is I found that the shower head, and this is a really strange thing to maybe complain about, but the shower head had a bunch of settings, and so that was cool. The problem is that I found the water pressure in general, or rather not the water pressure, but the actual strength and dispersion of the water for the shower to not be that good. And that was basically my one major complaint when it came to that. But even then, the other settings were really nice. Like there was this weird massage setting. Anyway, you should go check that out sometime. So that was quite a fun, pleasant surprise. And on top of that, the only other thing I wasn't a major fan of, but it wasn't like the end of the world, was the shampoo products that they used and the shower gel or whatever. It just I personally just didn't appreciate the smells and scents and everything. So there was that to sort of be aware of. But all in all, I thought their rooms were great. And again, go watch the solo cabin review that I gave, the solo studio review that I gave for that ship. I think I do a very good job in covering it. You'll see that it's really, really quite manageable and very functional and pragmatic. It serves the purpose that you want it to do, does a more than adequate job. And so, from my side, I thought that was just absolutely fine. And I have to say, I really enjoyed, especially with the non-solo studio part of the cabin, I really appreciated and enjoyed the fact that it was a how do I put it? It was very bright. And I like that. I really enjoyed the general design aesthetic of the ship itself, if that makes sense. It's got a really, really nice sort of style to it. But now moving on to the food. And the food's obviously really important because you're going to be eating probably a lot. So I want to tell you what was the thing that just blew me away, that I fell in love with when it came to this ship. And that goes without say as being the Indulge food hall. The Indulge food hall to me was just so spectacular. And I want to just show you some examples, and hopefully this will come up. Let me switch to this here. This is I believe it was wow, this was from the Indian place, and it was the chicken korma, if I'm not mistaken. Delicious. Really, really delicious. I don't know if that comes through in this photo, but it really was quite something. And the Indulge food hall as a whole just blew my mind. I mean, this was they have an electric onboard tandoori oven, which I just thought was so cool. And of course, they rightfully so display it in this glass as you're walking towards the entrance of the Indulge food hall. And there you can see them making it and doing their naan bread and everything. It was such a great concept. And for those who want to have sort of a comparison to Virgin, again, as a reference point, because I know many people on the channel came across it because of Virgin Voyages and my videos on that. It's like the galley, if the galley got upgraded by like a factor of, I don't know, 10 to 100, like just this huge upgrade. And that just made it a total treat. I cannot express further just how much I enjoyed the food at the Indulge food hall. And this is with regards to lunch, right? So how it worked is, I think, by the way, this could have been from dinner, can't remember now, but basically for breakfast, you can go to the Indulge food hall, but it's kind of like a buffet in that there are pre-selected items laid out throughout each thing, like a station. I wasn't a big fan of having breakfast here, so I never went there for breakfast. That's probably the one place I think they could have improved on for this. But for lunch and dinner, the menus are the exact same, except in dinner, they add, let's say, more like premium kind of, or dinner exciting options versus the standard lunch menu. So for example, they have a rotisserie there, and one of the things that you can get only for dinner is picanha and a slew of other things, right? And I just truly loved it. I know, I don't know if the pictures do it justice, but um, here's, I believe, the picanha as an example. And, you know, I also appreciated that the concept, and you can see, by the way, there I have, I think that's my chicken tikka or something. And then there's my naan bread over there. Um, you see that the portions, for example, they're not these overwhelming, massive portions. They're really like manageable, good meals because they also know the idea is to, of course, either share food or to get a whole bunch of things. So, you know, if, for example, you wanted more than this, right, you could order another one or two of them. But at the same time, it encourages you, I believe, to really just try out different things. And I loved that, really loved it. Um, in terms of other eating options, because that's just one of the options, right? And again, I could go on forever about the indulge food hall. There, of course, was also the other major place being, let's say, the local. And the local is basically like a 24/7 option, almost a 24/7 option. They have two sort of locals. They got the local bar and the local, like, let's say, restaurant. And the only difference you got to be aware of there is that the local restaurant is open again, like throughout the day around lunchtime onwards, and then it closes at some point late in the evening. And so the menu that you can have is restricted to a separate menu when it comes to what's available like throughout the day. So, you know, this is just an example of some of the food that was available there. I think this is a this blue cheese burger. This was the pastrami, etc. I mean, absolutely fantastic. And there's a video of mine, I think it's the Malta video. You'll see at the end, I go and eat there for lunch after a late lunch after a long day out in Malta. And once again, I mean, this was just a really fantastic option that I truly enjoyed. And I cannot stress how great it was that this kind of option was there 24/7. Now, in terms of the actual food that's available in the 24/7 menu, pretzel bites with I think beer cheese or something to dip. Uh, Hot wings, like chicken wings, and you can choose you want sweet, sour, sweet and sour, whatever, spicy or whatever. Delicious. Then there was the guacamole and all of that, and nachos. So nice, like kind of snacky stuff, but big portions. I mean, you could really go to town on what you'd eat there. And that's then always there for you. In terms of their main dining venue, again, because that was something new to me coming from, let's say, Virgin Voyages, but in terms of the main dining venue, I think something that was impressive was, you know, this was like my breakfast. It's not that impressive looking, and it was okay. The eggs were fine. The turkey sausage links were great. This is the hash. Wasn't the biggest fan of it, but for example, you know, you also had your pancakes or flapjacks rather, and you know, this was the oh, it's now what's it, huevo rancheros, right? It was just, and I'm sorry for butchering that, but there were just so many different options you could get here and there. This was like a breakfast wrap, but I didn't really like it because it didn't have any protein in it, which annoyed me. Or there's eggs, but you know, it didn't have a meat in it. So there were just really good options all around. And another fun thing, of course, was when it came to lunch on sea days, you'd have Hudson's open, and Hudson's was just great. Again, you'll see it in a lot of my videos when it comes to eating at Hudson's or my different port days. So go look at my port days when I was on this cruise with NCL. That's going to demonstrate to you just how beautiful of a venue this is. Really, it may not again look like much now on this photo, but go watch the video footage where you actually then will see me panning around and just how fantastic it is to walk into. Um, so I really have to say the options that are included are, in my view, more than good enough. Because again, unlike Virgin, there are restaurants where you do have to pay extra for if you haven't bought a dining credit package of some sort, or got it included in your meal. And I must say, this is where they actually, for me personally, lost a lot of points. I found that for the most part, the paid for dining options were not worth it. Not worth it at all. I was really unimpressed by them. I found that, for example, the what was it? The teppanyaki restaurant was, in all honesty, it was something where I really found that the entertainment value was good, and our particular chef was like a total legend, to put it mildly. The guy was excellent. But, if we didn't have him, would I have felt the same? I'm not sure. And that's, I think, where some of the problems arise, again, in my view, when it comes to that particular experience. When it comes to, for example, the food at the Italian place, Onda, I was so unimpressed by that. It's actually ridiculous. I really thought that that was shocking. I cannot begin to really go over how I really couldn't believe people made a fuss about this. And I'll show you some of the pictures right now of it. Again, I think I've done a video on it. If I haven't, I will. But this was my main, which again, it was a sizable piece. This was the oh wow, the veal. And the presentation of this and stuff was great. It was impressive, but was it that flavorful? Not really. The meat by itself, I didn't have any sweet quality I would have expected from the veal. It was, of course, quite tender, which is great, but it didn't have that nice, not subtle, but like the words escape my mind now, sort of flavor to it. Supple, I think, flavor. And the lemon, of course, obviously adds to it, and that made it for a much better experience. But again, I just really wasn't impressed. I ate here twice. I ate it again on the second sailing with a bunch of other people, just to sort of give it another chance. And it was better, but I ended up ordering a steak. Okay. So, I don't want to be going to an Italian quote unquote place. This was my side dish, which was the lentils. Nothing to write home about. The bread service was okay. It was actually quite nicely done, but I'm not coming there to pay for bread. It's my main thing. The drinks that they had there, at least the ones that I tried, were, I thought, great. This was something that was consistent. They always had excellent drink menus, and I have to say, to their credit, the drinks package that they give you as part of bundling a bunch of things together, I think the value is there for sure, especially on a long sailing if you're going to drink a lot. I wanted to try each place again because I didn't know if I would like going with NCL or not. So I wanted to make sure that if I am going to go with NCL, I cover my bases and really sort of decide like, hey, this is if this is the only time I go, I want to make sure I've got a full opinion. I can tell you after going on this as a spoiler, of course, or not a spoiler, that I would gladly go with NCL again. In fact, I check them regularly to see if anything catches my attention. This is, for an example, my starter, and it was really disappointing. The presentation's nice, but it was so cold. It clearly had just been, prepped in advance, kept in a fridge, and then they just take it out and bring it to your table. And because it was so cold and just had been in the fridge for however long, again, I'm not arguing that the food was awful or something. Food was not off. But when it's something is so cold, it actually loses its flavor. That's what happened here. It was really just disappointing. But this was not just unique to Onda. And again, for reference, this is the outside naming of the restaurant or whatever. The the venues themselves were quite impressive. Like, it looks quite nice. But unfortunately, again, I just really found the food not to be worth it. I mean, if you look at the prices they were charging, at least then, I would be shocked if you would pick that over the included dining. The included dining food was so consistently good. I mean, whether you wanted to spice it up by going to the Indulge Food Hall or if you wanted to go anywhere else. And again, I'm picking on Onda here because I just think it was a total hit and a miss. I'm going to come back to talking about this sort of like outdoors design and seating concept. So we're going to get to this. This was another thing that I absolutely loved about the ship and the experience with NCL on the ship. But needless to say, just a fantastic thing. But the take home or the takeaway from all of this is I just would not rate that that extra dining venue or extra cost dining or premium dining on NCL. It didn't impress me enough to say, hey, you should make an effort to go and pay extra for this. Not at all. I thought the included food was not only satisfactory, but in many cases very good. And certainly any difference between quality or perceived difference in quality of the sit down extra cost venues versus what was already included, I couldn't see any difference. In fact, there were occasions where I thought the food at the added cost places were terrible. Okay, but I want to move on a little bit now because there's plenty of videos you can go watch where I've done the reviews of these individual places if you're interested, and talk about sort of the entertainment. The entertainment on the ship. I want to start by talking about like events, so like the big ticket events and little ticket events, if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's a thing, but I have to say, mind blowing. When it comes to the big ticket events, look at this. This was The Price is Right. Their theater, again, the photos don't do it justice because these screens over here were phenomenally good quality. They quite literally, I'm obviously not from the US, they quite literally had The Price is Right fully done on the ship, and people won cars. I mean, it was like a religious experience as someone who is familiar with The Price is Right. Like, I know what it is, but I never obviously attended a live recording of the show, let alone just gone to any live version of it, which of course they are doing the full thing here. I mean, it's not obviously being recorded for television or anything and all of that, but they're doing it all. And they had like all the games because obviously I went on the sailing for so long. So I went to go see the show, not twice in the same night, but if it was showing another time, I'd go see it. And they didn't always do the same games. And it was just amazing. I mean, people really won cars on the first night. Person won a car. Like I couldn't believe it. And like, it was again, like a religious experience. The way the crowd were going nuts. I was sitting there and I was seeing two shows for the time of one. I had the actual show that was The Price of Right that they were doing, which everyone around me is telling is unbelievably well recreated. I went in and watched a modern taping of it and was like, oh my word, that is literally the same thing. Okay. And then just the audience, the people there just made it for me. I was like, I felt like I had been like teleported into a foreign place because the way people were losing their minds over this, it was truly, truly out of this world. I don't think I was allowed to record beyond this point, which is why I don't have more to show for that, but just really mind-blowing stuff. It was so much fun to see that. In terms of little ticketed events, or I'm calling them little ticketed events, let's have something fun to look at in the meantime. But in terms of small ticketed events, I have to say that sorry, I just want to mute that. How cool, by the way, is this view? Oh, must have been a motion photo, that's why. Sorry for that. But again, you can see here, if it lets me, no, it doesn't. Silly thing. Let's find something to put on for a second. Please, this can't be a motion photo too, right? It is not. Okay. We're going to talk about this pool, or not, this isn't a pool, but this over here, this over here. I mean, the design of the ship was just so, so, so cool. Really fell in love with it. But let's get on to the stadium. Okay. So before I move on to this, the other things that they had in terms of like regular activities included, for example, every day there was trivia. In fact, I kind of became known as the trivia guy because I really love trivia. And so in the mornings, there was a very early trivia that I would catch, usually I think when I was done with breakfast or just before breakfast. I ate very early. And then in the afternoon, I would do the one just before dinner or the solo meetup. And that's something I just don't want to forget about. Part of that solo experience every day they had a solo meetup, and every day at the solo meetup they would try and do something different. So for example, there would be the business as usual, let's say, of like, if anyone wants to do dinner, they've organized a solo dinner table at the place at a certain time. I typically didn't go to these. I only went on the last night for one of them, because of how amazing the people were that handled our solo uh, coordinators. They were just phenomenal. Um, but otherwise, I also learned this, and before I forget this point, for some reason, they could not handle tables that were bigger than, I want to say, 5 people. Once it got over 5 people, I don't know what it is about the way they do things, but they just could not handle it. If you were in a table of 4 or less, you could be done dinner within an hour, depending on how fast you ate and if you knew what you wanted from the get-go and all of that, easily. And you wouldn't feel too rushed. You wouldn't feel rushed at all. If you were a table of 5 or more, again, I don't know for the life of me what caused this, but something about the way things worked on that ship in Hudson's and the other main dining restaurant, from what I heard, at least for that one, they would just take triple the time. I have no clue what it was. It was a disaster. Okay. But in terms of the daily stuff like trivia, live music, performances, comedy shows, your magicians, I've yet to be impressed by any of them, but there was a magician on, I think, both shows. I skipped I think I watched the first one because I was already there and just wanted to give him a chance. The second time on the second sailing, I just didn't bother. It was just a big no from me. But it was so impressive that they had something going on all the time. There was no humanly possible way that if you truly couldn't think of anything to do with your time that you organized yourself, that you would not have something to do. It was beyond impressive. And I found that a huge contrast to Virgin Voyages. With Virgin, I really found that the unfortunate side of things is how they didn't seem to have something really always happening at all times. And NCL had so much happening, you really did have to like pick your favorite. And I think that was crazy. But I want to talk about, and by the way, that's a good thing. I just want to make that clear. What was also really cool was on the transatlantic, because of how long the sailing was, they had like a super trivia thing. So you each had teams. You had to write down your team, names or etc. And it was a mega tournament. It was a 5-day long tournament because at some point in the sailing, you are at sea for 5 days. And each day it's a different topic. It's like a mega quiz. And you then, your final score, okay, is obviously your total from all the days across. For those who are interested, we won. My team won. It was actually, though, quite close, except for one of the days near the end. We just got like, where there were bonus questions, we just got those. And that was really funny, including like, like what's the CEO's name? I knew that because on a flight we actually flew together from Istanbul to Miami the one time. We were seated next to each other. He had just become the CEO and chairperson, Harry Sommer. Really nice guy. I want to make sure, by the way, just in case that brings any questions, I paid for this trip myself in full, nothing sponsored by NCL, and same on any Virgin one as well. Now I want to just talk about the fixed events, or fixed structures rather, like the recreational features, let's say. I want to start with this one. This is what they call on the ship the stadium. Here's their cool little branding. It's really quirky and fun how they've got this. Oh, another one of these videos, these motion capture photos. No, this looks like an intentional video. Okay. So you got the stadium here. They had that weird circular ping pong, paddle and everything you'd want there, table tennis. It was really, really impressive. On top of, let's say, what for them is the usual suspects. For me, it was the first time coming across this because Virgin didn't have it. Wait, let's see what I've got here. Shuffleboard, shuffleboard rules. Okay, sorry, not as interesting. There was a beer pong or non-beer pong table, depending on what you're drinking, your age was, etc. foosball and everything, and it was just a really good social and fun area. But I think the thing that like really took the cake was, of course, a feature I honestly didn't like very much, and that was the speedway, which is a 3-story, and you heard that correctly. Is this another video? No, 3-story, if not 4, actually. Um, electric go-kart track on the ship. Now, unfortunately, this was a paid extra. It wasn't anything bank breaking, but I think the sad thing is, and my feedback at the time or thoughts at the time was, it's unfortunate that this being such a signature piece when you see the ship, like it's such a key feature when you're seeing the ship, is an added cost and not included. I understand why, but at the same time, it's really unfortunate. And it seems like this was obviously not something I only thought of. It's clear as day to anyone who's been on it. I think what was nice and reassuring is that the later ships of this class coming forward have all had this replaced by the first of its kind. I can't remember what kind of water slide or water coaster sort of thing at sea. Like a dual launch slide. It's really cool. Go watch videos on that if you haven't seen it. I don't have any, but others do, and it looks pretty cool. And I like that because that's a key feature. You don't have to pay extra for it. I think that's the way, or the mentality or design mentality. But just how crazy was it? It was such a wild experience. We're somewhere here. I think this was maybe by Mykonos or Santorini. It looks like, why am I saying Santorini? This is I think we were at sea on this day, so we are coasting along Greece somewhere. But this was not a Mykonos. And I think what was just so crazy is like you're in the middle of the ocean, you're going on an electric go-kart track. It's just a wild thing to think about, and it was a lot of fun. But it got a bit boring after a bit of time. But enough to do it once. I think that was cool. They then had the water park, or not the water park. I'm thinking of another ship, but they had the water slide, which again was really impressive. I mean, you see this, and it's just mind blowing that all of this is on a ship. There's not enough words to describe how surreal and wacky the very thought of it, I think, is. To just see that is to me something absolutely crazy. I should probably make sure I watch these before I show it, but here we are. So this is the wave, okay? This is their water slide. It's the only one. I think the sad part about it is that it's very quick and there's only one of them. The upside to this that took me by surprise is the water was heated, which I thought was amazing. I thought it was going to be freezing. It was so nice and warm. And it was awesome. You go down this, and you're in a tube. You do a half, what's it called, a half pipe or whatever, and you end up into the water over there. So you go all the way up and out there. It takes maybe, I don't know, a couple of seconds. There's my beautiful face in all sarcasm. What else have I got here? I haven't watched half this footage, just FYI. So I'm saying something, there I am, sun protection. I don't know why, as if I'm going surfing. And it's just super, super fun. I'm sure I'm saying this better in this video than what I'm doing now, but it was just absolutely, I wish, note to my past self, I know you were vlogging this, but would have been nice to do more attention on the slide. It was just so cool to kind of come across that and to experience it. And the other fun thing about it was the fact that it really, truly was super quick. Like you would go through people quickly. So if ever the ship had a lot of people wanting to go on the slide, which on one day it did, it often actually was pretty much empty, and you could just go down, walk right back up, and you could go on it within the space of 10 minutes. You go on it like, I don't know, easily more than 10 times. It was so accessible, and they've got towels right there as you get all fresh towels, etc. So everything was done so conveniently there. Now, aside from the water slides and stuff, you had also the hot tubs. And I really, again, cannot stress how this was such a welcoming and refreshing change compared to Virgin Voyages. I'm going to try and see if I can find this here. I believe I have something of it on. Yes. So here is, just as an example, they're also infinity tubs. So this is taken on the top of the ship. There's Santorini. And you have this infinity tub. You can see the reflection of the water slide sign there. That is running across. It's just so nicely placed on both sides of the ship. So you've just really got a fantastic opportunity to firstly get into a sizable hot tub. You can really fit a lot of people, and it stretches a very long way. Both sides, more than ample space, and again, just conveniently located right by the fresh towel station if you need any. The pool is in the middle of it all at the top, and the best part is that that's not the only pool. And the pool there, I have to say, it's about a little bit or just as big as the one on Virgin, which I call the pond, but I think it felt like that one was a bit bigger. There's a bar right nearby, and you'll see, I think I've got some footage I can show you from the first day where the ship is actually going to be leaving from. Sorry, not leaving from, but like these celebrations for day one by the pool. Yes. So here you can see the what I'm talking about. So over there is the shower for the one hot tub. And then here's the hot tub. It stretches. I wish I could zoom in, but it stretches really significantly. It's quite big. You can fit really a lot of people in there. There's the water slide, and here is the pool, right? And it truly, truly was just a total blast. This is on the first sailing, the 10-night sailing. And all the way back there behind, unfortunately you couldn't see it, is the other hot tub. Again, they're twins of one another. So you have so many spaces in which you can just go and use the hot tubs that are there if you want to, or the pool. There's an entire deck for just lounging outside if that's what you mainly wanted to do. And so I really just love the way they designed it. The one thing that I take points off for the design of this ship was that, I think that's deck 16, someone can correct me, but basically if you want to get from the one side, the forward, to the aft of that deck, you have to walk through the buffet. And that annoyed the living daylights out of me. I do want to add, there is a buffet. I don't talk about it because I really didn't use it. I don't understand why people like the buffet. It's just not my thing. Please, if you can, explain it to me in the comments below. But doesn't appeal to me in any which way whatsoever. The buffet area was something that you had to go through to get to the elevators if you wanted to go either one floor up, one deck up to the stadium and the sports area, etc. And that just annoyed me if you were coming from the forward. Okay, if you were coming from the aft, then again you'd have to get to the front, you'd have to walk through the buffet in order to get outside to the pool deck, and then you'd have to walk again to the middle of the ship there. It just was quite irksome. And I think one of the worst design flaws I could think of, because, you know, let's say you wanted to go on the water slide and you're at the back of the ship. Well, you're going to have to now, and I don't know, you're in your swimming outfit or whatever, you're now going to have to go through the place where people are getting up and going and eating food, right, at the buffet, to get to the front. If you're going to, you know, try and do the most, I would say, reasonable way. It was just a pain in the backside, and something that I hope they addressed going forward, because it just, I couldn't for the life of me understand that. Before I forget, I just want to add there was also a dry slide. In fact, two dry slides that were racing slides. which was great if you wanted to go down to where Indulge was, or the one bar. Like, let's say you were done swimming and you're like, oh, I want to grab some lunch. It was faster to take the slide than it was to wait for the elevator, or to take the stairs. That was actually really fun, and I did that several times. And they were great, really, really great. In fact, I was always wondering how I would feel about the dry slide, and the answer was great, because yeah, you don't have to then be in your swimming outfit. You can just go down. You get there, great. Go and walk to get something to eat or drink, whatever it may be. There was the drop slide, also dry slide. This one was really interesting because the drop itself is kind of short-lived, and it's actually not such a crazy, scary, thrilling ride. And for some reason, I expected that to be a bit more thrilling, and it really wasn't. Once you've gone on it once and you understand that the drop is kind of short-lived, the main drop, it's okay. And then there's the onboard miniature golf, which I'll try and see if I find, because it was under maintenance until the end of my second sailing, unfortunately. But the upside is we didn't have to pay extra to do it. And it was impressive. I mean, you know, that's another thing. It really was an impressive thing to experience. I'll see if I have footage of the miniature golf somewhere. I just don't recall exactly where it could be. But that was something where I was kind of, again, impressed by. It's a really cool miniature golf. Unfortunately, it has a lot of mechanical elements to it, which in theory work amazingly. But unfortunately, when I was on there, they weren't working, which was one of the reasons they allowed you to do it at no extra cost. But I actually would have paid extra to play on that, with everything working and functioning. I'm having an issue trying to find, unfortunately, the footage of the golf thing. But you know, go and look online. It's really impressive, and something that I truly thought stood out to me in the most awesome way. The last thing I want to touch on in terms of the last two things is, or three, we're going to settle at three, is the fact that there is a observation lounge, which is so awesome. They've got some board games, I think, there for people if they want, but it's really where there's a bar, and it's fantastic. The bar there is great. It's awesome if you want to do some work, maybe on your laptop, or do some browsing, or just honestly relax, chill, and just take in the views. It's got such a nice moody design to it. It's a really chilled space, and they do serve like afternoon tea and stuff there, no added cost, etc. And in the morning for breakfast, they do actually offer the cereals and stuff there too. So it is a kind of grab and go breakfast option as well for cereals and pre-made stuff, sandwiches, etc. Again, excellent design concept, superb. And the last thing I want to talk about there, or last two things, is the other pools, right? So earlier on, you may recall, I showed a image of the exterior of the ship, the actual kind of design layout of it. And once more, it is just so well done. They have this thing called the Ocean View Boulevard, or whatever the branding of it is. But in all fairness to them, it really is like this nice kind of walkway where you can go and see what's going on outside. They've got lovely art deck like on display that just like adds to the vibe and the mood. Again, the whole thing is just super impressive. Here we go. I think I have some stuff from it. You know, it's, let's see what this is. This is quite a quirky thing they had on the ship. So they have this, you know, transparent walkway that you can go on at some point. And it was really funny because you could see people freaking out. I have no idea why I didn't focus on. Okay, there you go. So me getting in my own way. Yeah, So you have that going on, which I just thought was really fun, um, and really cool. I really liked it, if that's not obvious. And again, the rest of the ship in terms of how it's designed here, this is why I have this photo. So this is the same deck where you've got a lot of the eateries on. And let's say if you took the slides, the dry slides, you would end up on this deck, but just on the opposite side because the one slide kind of comes out there. As you can see, tons of lounges. I mean, if you can't find a place to lounge, you're doing something wrong. They then just had like certain nifty little concepts, like, these kind of daybed lounges, but they're surrounded by the smallest little kind of bit of water if you want to kind of dip your toes in and just chill. Or maybe you've got kids and the kids are wanting to be there. And then they had these kind of plunge pools, which I think were heated, because I don't ever remember getting into them, even on the coldest day, and I would be by myself, and they were warm. So I stand to be corrected on that. But again, if all you want to do is take a dip, freshen up, even do some, I don't know, light exercises in them, perfect. And really, this was the most crowded I ever saw it. And when you're on an even less crowded sailing, you just got the Atlantic Ocean or something when we're doing the transatlantic, it was superb. So I like the fact that it's not all needing to be centered around that pool on the top deck. You could, or the main top deck. You could, if you wanted to, get the same thing if all you wanted was a dip or something over here. The only thing they didn't have on this deck was the infinity hot tubs. And again, I think that's actually totally acceptable. I think given the usage I saw of them, yeah, they could maybe increase it. But for the most part, I think this caused a nice kind of separation because the hot tubs were more sociable, etc. Whereas down here, people were kind of pretty quiet and at their own pace. So again, just an awesome design concept. So the last thing for recreational features before we move on is just the spa. And the spa was super impressive. Really super impressive. Yes, you had to pay extra, but I really liked it. And the crazy part is when I spoke to people who had been with NCL before, they all told me that this was their least favorite of the spas and that they preferred the other ones and that they were nicer ones, etc. I thought this was great, but I'm not going to disagree with people who have been on uh, tons of their other ships. I would hope they would probably know more than me on that. So this is like there was this main kind of pool which I really enjoyed for just trying to do laps in. We're not talking like hectic laps. This is going to be like you want to do I don't know, breaststroke or maybe butterfly, but it'd be a bit of a stretch to do that. It's not long enough, but there also were jets there. If you want to do like lunges and stuff, you could actually do that quite nicely in here. And again, just super peaceful. Oh, that was a neat trick. Um, and let's see what else have I got here to show. Yeah, they had the aromatic steam room. There was the thermal suite, which had all the other stuff in it as well. The price for this was also pretty reasonable. My only tip here would be, and I don't have that much footage because I only would take photos if there was no one in shot or something, because I wanted to respect people's privacy and not be walking around with a camera in people's faces. This is of the steam room, obviously. I'm actually impressed I was even able to get any images out of that. It was just truly out of this world. I loved it. This is one of my favorite things, especially because in my case, a lot of the Greek ports I had been to before, whether on a cruise or standalone vacation. And so for me, getting the package to go to the spa every day whenever I wanted to, when they were open, of course, that worked out as a great added cost. And it was really reasonable. The other great thing, of course, about the spa is that if the weather was bad outside, which on this sailing just was not the case, well, you always knew that it was going to be very comfortable there, and less crowded, of course. I don't think I'll be able to find it immediately, so I'm not going to try. But there is also at the back a fantastic lounging area with heated slab chairs and recliners, you name it. It was just, again, super impressive. This is the Penrose atrium or area. And this is kind of like your central hub. Some live music would take place there or over there. There's a bar over here, Starbucks over there. This is the entrance on either side to the main theater. Up there's where there's the whiskey bar, if I'm not mistaken. And the shopping is one floor above. To the left over here, you've also got guest relations, which was, again, it's just so nicely done. There you are, onboard credit and guest services. You've got, again, guest services down there, or I think cruise next. Just a really nicely done area, and so much natural light coming in when it's a sunny day, and with stunning views with these floor to ceiling windows on the side there. Again, I cannot express just how beautifully designed this ship is and how spacious it feels. Especially when I think about, again, Virgin Voyages. It's, this is the equivalent of where the roundabout is for Virgin, except here it's so much also clearer that, number one, it's 3 different decks. Okay, and on top of that, it's more spacious and airy. It's not so claustrophobic. Really, really cannot stress how fantastic this ship is designed. Now, moving on to nearing the end of this, the excursion process. I have to say the excursion process was where I think NCL, in some ways, did a good job. In other ways, left a lot to be desired. So where did they do a great job? If you booked an excursion through the ship, the night before that excursion, they would deliver to your cabin a excursion ticket thing that you then needed to bring with you. And it had all your details, the time, your name, all of this stuff. And you just brought that with for when you were getting on the excursion, like a voucher kind of system. So it was very impressive that they would have that envelope already delivered to your cabin the night before, so that you had everything. You didn't need to worry about going and collecting something at a certain time and whatever. It wasn't the case. If you decided to go and book an excursion in the middle of the sailing, you decided you wanted to do that, you could do it either online on the app, or you could go and physically speak to a representative. You can see here, if you can make it out, it says excursions. So they had a desk there with a pamphlet of all the different excursions, the costs, descriptions, and stuff. So if you didn't like to be on your phone the whole time, that was an option. And they were really great actually in handling that. I had to go there once just to ask and check things out. I was like, maybe there's something I do want to do through the ship, because I would get $50 or something off every time. And in some cases, there were several excursions that you could do that were already covered because of the bundled drinks package and stuff that came with. So a lot of these though were things that, you would be insane to pay out of pocket through the ship versus directly, like the hop on, hop off buses, which I never recommend. Those are always traps. But be that as it may, it was just very impressive, that element of how it would come delivered to your room, etc. Where I found they really left a lot to be desired was the actual experience of then going on your excursion. So in the morning of your excursion, you would end up going to the theater, their main theater, and that's then where they would start to sort of, let's say, sort you out and get you through the process. I'm trying to see if I've got, I know I have this footage somewhere in one of my videos, but it was just a mess. I can't begin to explain how of a disaster the excursion process is. You go into the theater, you got your ticket, they got a screen up that's explaining the instructions, like a slideshow that's on repeat, showing you how to, there's your ticket, look for this, look for this, look for that, listen for this. And then they would call your number, and then you'd go down, and then you'd show them something. They'd then direct you to one of the exits and give you a sticker or something. Then you go and give that sticker. It was so convoluted, I couldn't stand it. It was a waste of time, inefficient, but you had to do it. And so of the 1 or 2 excursions I think I did through the ship, one which was because someone was sick and they found me as I was heading out, and they said, look, I'm really sick, I've got this excursion, if you're interested in doing it, you're welcome to. And it was at the one port where I genuinely had been to so many times. I didn't have anything planned because I'd kind of done everything, but I'd honestly never done this thing. I never would out of my own volition, which was this tuk-tuk thing, electric tuk-tuk or whatever. And like that allowed me to see what it was like. And I have to say, just wasn't a fan. Virgin have this right. Virgin, you do it on the app. Yes, you can go speak to someone at that desk, wherever, and all that jazz. But then, on the app, it says at this time, meet over here at this table or whatever, get your thing, head out. And I really prefer the way that's handled, at least. Ultimately, as I always say, you shouldn't do the excursion through the ship. That's like a nuclear option, last resort. But if that is the option that you need to take or want to take, I just think NCL can really improve on the way that's done. It's too everyone go meet here and we're going to try and handle all the people at the same time. It becomes a mess. No one's listening properly. Someone thinks that they heard their group. They're sending the entire group down when they say only send one person. It's a total disaster and they need to work on that. So that's my one complaint there. In terms of customer care and guest relations, what was just the general service like? Honestly, unbelievable. My cabin attendant, especially on the second sailing, my first sailing, I realized he wasn't that good. Second sailing, my cabin attendant, I believe his name was Dominique. Brilliant. Really nice guy. Excellent. Super helpful. Super kind. It was amazing. Every time I walked into my room after he had cleaned it up or something, you'd swear I was the first person ever staying in this cabin, ever. It was so well done. If he overheard me speaking to someone and I mentioned something about like, oh, I ran out of a pen in my room, I need to remember to go get one or something, I'd get there and there'd be a pen there waiting for me, right? Just such amazing attention to detail. The cruise director on the first sailing, Richard, was such a legend and such a nice guy. This was a really fun story, if you'll indulge me for a moment. He quite literally got up, like he saw me as I was heading to go out, and I was going down the stairs, and I said, "Oh, hey, Richard," because like he had introduced himself earlier to everybody, and he said, "Oh, hey," and he really stopped to have a chat. And he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Oh, Jason." He said, "Oh, it's good to meet you and everything." I kid you not, I got to my cabin later that day and there was a gift basket thing of wine, sweets, you name it, from him. It was just such a kind gesture. The maitre d' at the one main dining venue, he always saw me religiously arriving to have breakfast or lunch or something. And the one time there was just a really annoying kind of service experience that happened with one of the things I'd booked at this time. I came on time and they just several times were messing it up. And this was like the most unique instance of just a weird service slip up. He came by to say, "Hey, what's wrong?" and all of that. I said, "I don't know, there's a problem here." And he said, "Oh, you're reserved for the same time as always?" I said, "Yes." He checked. Everything got sorted. I came back to my room again later that day. There was a wine bottle, so 2 wine bottles from him with a note apologizing and everything, formal note kind of thing. Like it's not like a personal thing or whatever, but it's like, from them, etc. All these little things are my favorite story that I tell everybody because I think this just highlighted it. I love key lime pie. And on one of the days of the 10-night sailing, there was key lime pie at Indulge. And that was it. It was supposed to come again. I asked someone to check when was it happening, and it was only going to come again one other time. And I was so disheartened because I really, really love key lime pie. It's not a normal thing to find where I live. And so I was like, oh my word, there's key lime pie. The head sous chef came to speak to me and was told that I was looking when the next key lime pie is. And he said to me, I see here it's only planned for one other day. But and I said, oh, one other day? That sucks. You know, I'm on the next sailing. When is it planned there? He looks and he says, only once. And I said, oh my word, only once? It was so good. He said, give me your cabin number. I kid you not, an entire key lime pie was made for me. That blew my mind. I got to my cabin, and in the fridge was an entire key lime pie, freshly made. It took me, I think, like a week to get through it, because I mean, I had to really exert a lot of self-control there. But it was just such an amazing example of the kind of service I remember thinking of associating with like Disney. If you ever stayed at like one of Disney's hotels way back in the day, that like Disney's service was impeccable. And I was very lucky to have always I stayed once at one of their moderate hotels, which was the New Orleans, Port Orleans, Riverside. And everyone will say, oh, French Quarter is better. Either way, it was great. And then when I was last there ages ago, I stayed at their yacht club and this is all in Florida, obviously. And, you know, Disney just had this brand of just excellent top-notch service. An example there being, I was speaking to a relative of mine and I mentioned how, you know, I really, it's unfortunate that they don't sell, you know, Pepsi products because I prefer Pepsi to Coke. You know, pitchforks, I can hear them. And you'd get back to the cabin, not cabin, the room, and there would be you know, a thing of Pepsis, or you need an adapter because your travel adapter, blah blah blah, travel adapter. Just because you're walking by and they overheard, and yeah, they're eavesdropping, but the eavesdropping pays off. It was just amazing. I experienced that here. So my general thoughts about NCL, well, one last thing, which is going to be the disembarkation. I do have one issue with the disembarkation process with NCL, and that is that on one hand, it's very simple in the sense of like they kind of put these tags out before and you go and collect them and then you can put it on your luggage and they're color coded and each color relates to a certain time slot. And so that way, when you're off the ship, they can guarantee that when you're off the ship, your luggage will be there waiting for you to collect it. Okay. The downside that I had with this is you can't leave, and it makes sense because you're picking it, right? But like if you, for example, picked a very late time because you're on the safe side, you realize, oh, I'm actually ready early, you're going to have to wait. If you try and get off before that time, you either won't be allowed to or you'll be allowed to, but your luggage will not be ready because when you handed in your luggage, it was at a certain time and they're going according to that system. So I don't really know what a good workaround with that would be. Like maybe, you know, get the earliest and then if you know you're going to do it or you believe you will, but you just want to check and that way you'll walk off and your stuff will be ready. That was the one downside I had. I was ready to go off the ship a lot earlier than I thought originally, but as an abundance of caution, I took like an hour later slot than what I wanted. And it was early, like super early. But it's just one of those things when you're like, you know, well, I'd like to be off the ship now and I can't because if I get off the ship now, and this was when I was in New York now, it was freezing, and you'd have to wait now whilst your luggage is still being, you know, prepared to be put where you're collecting it. So that was the one downside I had is that you know, you couldn't just online select the time you're leaving and then kind of roll with it. And they would do the luggage tags, maybe come collect it by your cabin, you know, drop them off for you. And then I think you could, but from what I recall, I had to go and physically get them out in the lobby, then put them on my suitcase, and then leave my suitcases outside my cabin on the night before we'd arrive at a certain time, and then they would collect it. So that was my one gripe, but other than that, it was a very simple process. And when I got off, the luggage was there. So, you know, I'd say pretty much like everyone else, if you're going to take that option. And to my recollection, this was the first time I had done that option because I just had so many suitcases with me because of how long the trip was and going from like warmer summer to a colder New York. I had a quite a inefficient type of variety of outfits. So to wrap this very long video off, and to all of you who watched it and made it through here, again, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe if you are. And please, again, share your thoughts and feelings about what I've said and different views, maybe of a different cruise line or the same one. Because I've heard a lot of people don't like the NCL ship. But what was my overall thoughts of NCL? The honest truth is, if you haven't kept up with some of my more recent videos, I really liked NCL a lot. I was really sold on NCL from the sailing. Based off of this and this alone, if I'm going on a Prima or newer ship, right? So either the same class or whatever the next thing is, so long as they stick to this general idea, you can bet that I will, without a doubt, um, I will pick NCL as my first choice. I really love their design. I really love the food that I got to have. I love the layout of their ship. I love the features, facilities. The service was impeccable. The entertainment was so much better than Virgin. Um, and I know it's coming across maybe that I'm like hating on Virgin. And the honest truth is, yeah, I am. Because when something becomes bad, you don't just accept it, right? They're doing a bad job and they're not going to get better unless you actually voice your concern. And I obviously do that with all the surveys that they sent out when you're done with your sailing and stuff. But, it doesn't seem like they're listening. And NCL I found was all the things I liked about Virgin and in every way better, at least as far as the ship was concerned. And then in other ways, they just blew Virgin out of the park. I mean, the service, the treatment, everything, you name it, it was amazing. The one thing, of course, people might say is like, okay, but it's not adults only. At least in my sailings, one being the 10 night, the other being the transatlantic, which again typically doesn't have that many kids. There were kids on board. They, at least in this case, happened to be the most well behaved kids I've ever. I was embarrassed for my younger self with how well behaved these kids were. So I understand you could end up, every sailing's different. You can end up with these lunatic kids who come across as like the generalization of little monsters running around, and parents that kind of just let their kids go do their own thing and let other people suffer and kind of abscond from looking after them. That of course can happen, but that's a dice roll anywhere. There is an adults only section. I believe the Vibe Beach Club is adults only, but you do have to pay extra for it. And that's something I haven't even spoken about here. I didn't go and experience that. I walked around it to check it out. And I think on a busy sailing, which, yes, could have a lot of kids then, if you really wanted to have that retreat, I think it makes sense. And that you would then do, I guess, instead of the spa. And that's the other thing. I picked the spa over the Vibe Beach Club because the Vibe Beach Club didn't have anything unique, whereas the spa did. And I think that's a good way to also look at it because they go for around the same price. So would I recommend NCL to people? I do already. If people ask me, hey, I'm thinking of going on a, do you still, should I go on Virgin? I say, look into NCL, right? I really had a great time with them. I think, by the way, their loyalty program is way better fleshed out, obviously longer established cruise line. It makes more sense to me. And I don't like loyalty programs in general because they just increase the cost of everything for everyone. But I just really had such a positive time with NCL. And, I can tell you, at least as the way things stand, when I consider doing another cruise, I look at NCL's website. And I, will definitely try to land another cruise being one that goes to their private island, especially this year or next year, because of all the upgrades that they've done to it. And I love to see that fully fledged cruise line owned private island experience, especially now that they've upped their game there. Again, so shout out to every person who works at NCL and goes and puts in an amazing effort, at least like the people that I came across on my first time sailing with them on this long, crazy trip. Um, you guys were so impressive with how excellent of a product you delivered and the quality of service, the sincerity of the service. Um, you know, what an amazing, amazing experience of a type of hotel experience that you used to hear people speak about, or you might have experienced way back when, that you may have thought vanished. But I can tell you it's very much alive and kicking on this ship, at least. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed.